Like that music. Hi, everyone. Welcome to LinkedIn Live with me, your host, Neha. Thank you so much for tuning in on this Thursday afternoon. Hope you all are doing great. Today, we are celebrating Black History Month on Throughline. Black History Month honors the contributions of African Americans to U.S. history. Our guest today on Throughline is Henry Chllds, and our topic is Closing the Racial Wealth Gap. Henry is the founder of the Minority Wealth Commission and the chief fund manager at the Business Consortium Fund. From 2018 to 2020, Mr. Chllds led the United States policy agenda for minority business development. He was the head of the U.S. delegation to the OECD, where he led the Working Party on small and medium-sized businesses. Mr. Chllds worked at the White House, where he led the White House's African American agenda. And Mr. Chllds also served as the 17th National Director for the U.S. Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency. Currently, Mr. Chllds is advising two private equity funds seeking to raise $450 million for minority-owned businesses. Henry holds a Juris Doctorate from the St. Louis University School of Law. Henry, welcome to Throughline Thursday.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
It's an honor to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
How's your day going?
It's doing awesome, out here, trying to raise as much money as possible to change people's lives. So,
where are you based out of?
I am in Washington, D.C.
Great. Is it sunny? It's cold?
It's cloudy. But I stay inside. I'm a homebody. I like staying inside and working all day anyway, so the weather doesn't impact me at all.
All right. Well, great, Henry. Tell us about your current job. You're doing some awesome, great things. What does it involve doing?
Yeah, so what I'm doing now is I'm trying to fill the access to capital gap. We all hear about the racial wealth gap. Latest statistics, the typical white family has 8 times the wealth as a typical Black family. And so what we're doing is I'm raising large pools of capital to invest in minority businesses. And over the past year, as you mentioned, I've launched 2 private equity firms, and we've raised $140 million over the past year. So I'm pretty excited about that. We're off to a great start.
That's great. Tell us, a typical day in your current position, what does it involve doing?
Yeah, so I'm on the capital raising side of the house. So what that means is I'm always marketing. I'm always talking to the biggest investors. So pensions, endowments, fund of funds, foundations, corporations, family offices, and we're trying to get them to invest money into social justice, racial justice, and minority-owned businesses. And the reason why this is so important is because if you just look at the assets under management industry, there's over $100 trillion invested, but less than 1% of that is in the hands of diverse asset managers. So we're really trying to shake up the game because we know, if we're able to generate our own wealth, then we know that we're going to invest it in these businesses and these communities. So most of my day is just, out there pitching to big investors, telling our story, and then showing them the impact that their dollars are going to make. So, because they always want to see, it's once you get to that level, it's not just about the money. It's about transforming lives.
Absolutely. Is it, philanthropists and financial institutions coming together, in your current gig? Because I know that that's super important. Is that something, that's happening as well?
Yeah, so there has been, I guess you would call it an ecosystem building with, corporations, with some of their corporate social responsibility, some of the foundations, and just focusing on some of the ESG stuff, so environmental, social, and governments. We're more on the private equity side because we're looking for good double bottom line returns. We have to get returns for our investors, and then we also want to do good. So we're not exactly on the philanthropy end; we're more than the middle. So
that's great. tell us how you began your career, and you're very inspirational. What inspired you to take up these causes?
So my resume is just it's a zigzag. It makes no rhyme or reason to people looking on the outside. But so start off ministry, went into law. So I'm a lawyer by trade. Um, didn't find my answers in the law. So then I moved into politics,
That's
did
amazing.
politics for a couple of years. And then in 2017 is where I really started the work I'm doing now. I got appointed to the U.S. Department of Commerce as a special advisor for economic development. So, going into neighborhoods and revitalizing them. Then 2018, I got promoted to the White House. And my mission at the White House was I led the African American engagement for the White House Office of Public Liaison. And my focus there was in funding historically Black colleges, urban revitalization, raising, private equity dollars to invest in businesses, and some place-based policies. And then my big take was I also was trying to help minority businesses undergo the digital transformation. And this was, before this whole COVID outbreak, which, we'll probably get to later.
Yes.
So, my life story has been kind of, all over the map, but I've been always interested in helping communities grow and helping people live the American dream.
That's great. Why is closing the racial wealth gap so important to you? I was reading that today the median wealth gap is 10 times between Black Americans and white Americans. And can you also maybe shed some light on how we got here?
Yeah, so it's personal to me, because it to me the wealth gap all comes down to personal freedom. We live in America. In America, it's a capitalist society. In a capitalist society, if you don't have wealth, if you don't have economic freedom, then you're never truly free. So that's the reason why I'm out here, raising all this capital is for personal freedom. And I can tell you personally, there is nothing more exciting than taking a business from scratch, growing it to millions, billion-dollar revenues, hiring thousands of people, and then building up your community. And if you're really good, then you can help change the world. And the reason why this is so important to me, I growing up Black in America, it is not easy. And my job is to go into the most distressed communities. I'm in Chicago. I'm in the worst parts of Philadelphia, the worst parts of Atlanta, New York City, Baltimore. And I have to go there and I have to, help these people, see that, the American dream is still possible. Because it's hard when you wake up, and, you're struggling to make ends meet. And then you see on the other side, you see all these people, buying yachts, and doing their space race. And it does something to your psyche. But, I go there and tell people, entrepreneurship is a way out. There's a proven wealth building model with building a business. Yes, we have gaps with like access to capital, but we're plugging those gaps. So that's why it's important to me.
That's great. How do you plug in, these gaps, and you mentioned you go around and visit these de-invested communities. Maybe if you could shed more light on how you make capital accessible to these minorities, because there's a lot of credit invisibility there. It's chicken or egg situation. You have to pay bills to get credit, and have a bank account to have certain amount in your savings account or checking account to be banked. A lot of them are underbanked. So how do you help them?
Yep. So I'm gonna separate it from the debt side, which you just covered, and then the equity side. So on the debt side, everything you just mentioned is correct, especially historically. And this is the same for Black, Hispanic, Asian businesses. Trying to get out. So let's just start. You mentioned the racial wealth gap, right? And that translates into a startup capital gap. So minority businesses, you start off with less. Okay. And then you have trouble attracting outside financing. Black entrepreneurs in their first year, less than 1% of them can get a bank loan. And then when you try to get equity, when you try to get venture, when you try to get private equity, If you look at 2021, it was a record fundraising year for venture capital, over $100 billion, and less than 1% of that went to Black owned businesses. So what we do, luckily for now, technology is kind of knocking down some of those barriers. So for instance, fintech, in the past, you'd have to go through your local bank. They go through your credit scores, look at your collateral, and it's normally, no, you don't own your own house, no, your credit score is too low, need not apply. But now with fintech, literally you go online in less than 30 minutes, you fill out some questions, and you can have, credit in the next day. So it's kind of changed the line, and now the banks have started reacting to that, and they're starting to have more flexible underwriting criteria. For us, since we're with private businesses, we develop our own underwriting, so we have a lot more flexible terms also.
That's great. Because I was talking to somebody, and they're trying to pivot into something new, and we were talking about crowdfunding, and he said, well, my crowd doesn't have funding, so I can't crowdfund. Where do I go? So these issues are real issues. No, just COVID-19 has definitely impacted minority businesses and Black tech. In your opinion, have these inequities become more pronounced through COVID?
So the short answer is yes. So I'm gonna do a snapshot of where it was pre-COVID, and then tell you how it is now. So pre-COVID-19, there were 8 million minority-owned businesses. They employed 8 million people and generated trillions of dollars to the economy. Okay. Then COVID-19 hit, the nation shut down, and from February to April of 2020, 40% of Black businesses closed, shut down. And the reason why it hit them so hard, why they were so vulnerable, is because, as we mentioned before, most of these businesses just didn't have the capital to do business, digital. So that had it. So I'll just give you some statistics. Only 4% of Black businesses have employees, and you can trace all of that to the access to capital gap. So that's one stint. The second, the bigger thing, though, which very few people ever talk about, is that COVID-19 has ushered in the fourth industrial revolution. And this fourth industrial revolution is unlike anything this world has ever seen before. I mean, I'm a tech junkie, so you're talking about nanotechnology, biotechnology, augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, blockchain, machine learning, energy storage. So you have all these new technologies, and what's different than this revolution than anything we've seen in the past is really in speed and intelligence. So I just want to give you an example, because this is kind of important for people to understand. In the past, these revolutions, whether you take Steam, take the PC revolution, whatever, they take up to 50 years, right? Mm-hmm. So if you miss the first 2 years of them, you'll be fine. You have 48 years to catch up. But now if you look out there, you notice these waves of innovation are occurring every 18 to 24 months. So if you missed the first 2 years, you missed a wave and you can't catch up. And then the second thing, which is the bigger thing to me, is that this fourth industrial revolution, it's not about industrialized labor, okay? It's about industrialized intelligence. What you're seeing is they're trying to merge the man with the machine. So that's when you hear about hybrid, thinking in human tech. And it's out there now. If you see, some of the stuff out there in the labs, it'll scare some people, especially when you start talking about the singularity and some other stuff. So that's the big difference. And that's why it's so hard for any small business, not just Black businesses, to compete, is because this whole digital economy is just taking off.
Absolutely. I was talking to Cecil Plummer, president of WRMSDC. You may know him. He was mentioning, because he, is in the same space. He mentioned it's just super hard for folks who've lost a business to also pivot to something else, because it's still not easy to get loans and have access to capital, for minorities. Is your current position, the fund, helping these folks that want to pivot, have a great idea? What is the criteria for you to make access to capital for these folks?
Yeah, so my number one goal, the only reason I still wake up in the morning, is because we need a what I call a continuum of capital, right? Because people are in different stages of their business. So we're doing everything from venture startup capital all the way to, leverage buyouts. But the key is, even if you're not fundable for, one of my current funds, we also work with some of these ethnic chambers. You mentioned Cecil. We work with supplier diversity organizations to make sure that we can get you, what you need now in order so that you can get some of those funds later. So I built a big ecosystem. I work with a ton of people to make sure that, people are able to get what they need. The second part, the businesses we're looking for in these funds, what I like to say is we're looking for entrepreneurs of color who are building the world-class products and services of the future. So what does that mean, Henry? So if you look at Shark Tank, and people just know Shark Tank, so it's an easy analogy. If you look at the businesses that get funded, and Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary talks about this all the time. They fit 3 criteria, and they're the same criteria I use. The first one is you've got to be able to articulate your idea in 60 seconds or less. If you cannot articulate your idea to a 4th grader in less than a minute, then you need to, sharpen your idea, because chances are it's not market ready. Number 2, and this is the big one, especially for minority businesses, you have to have the right team. I can tell you, just me personally, this was the hardest thing. I've never been, a team person. I've always just, I'm gonna be honest with you, being Black, you just learn how to bootstrap everything yourself. You do it yourself, so you're not used to working with a team. But when you're really trying to scale a business, you have to have a team. So think of it, you're Wonder Woman, okay? But to get to the next level, you're gonna have to go find Batman. You're gonna find Superman, Green Lantern, and the Flash, because those are the companies that get funded. If you look at Silicon Valley, you look at your Facebooks, Twitters, Google, they are teams. They're not sole proprietorships. And the third one is you have to know your numbers. And what that means is you have to know how fast is your market growing, how much, business you need to bring in to become profitable, where's technology taking you? Because if you're able to answer all those questions, then, investors know that you're really, a business that's, looking to expand and grow. And those are the businesses that get funded.
That's great, because typically wealth begets wealth. So you're changing things here. And you touched on to how, you decide on which entrepreneur to invest in. What would your advice be to someone who's trying to level up in their career?
So I'm just gonna give all my lessons are life lessons, because I learned the hard way. I wish I had somebody who told me this stuff when I was younger. But the truth is, the number one thing you have to do is you have to take control of your own retirement. And back in the day, let's just take your grandparents' age, right? You work 20, 30 years for the company, you retire, you get your pension, you live off that pension for the rest of your life. That's not us today.
No.
That's not us today. So
Yeah.
what you have to do is you have to find a way. The step number 1 is you have to find a way to increase your earnings. And the reason you have to do that is because you need enough money to pay for the basics: food, housing, clothes, basics. But then you have to have enough to save. And what you do with that savings, and this is what nobody told me. I thought, you just keep your savings in your bank. No, you take your savings and you have to invest. And that is a big step. You have to invest your money and invest in things that are growing faster than inflation. And I pause because I'm thinking about the inflation numbers, and I'm starting to trigger. Because if your money's not growing, let's just say you get a 4% raise. If inflation is 7%, then you basically took a 3% pay cut. So you got to invest in things. So look at equities. I always say look at stocks. Look at real estate. Real estate's normally a surefire bet, and then I do private, equity. So invest. And then the third thing is you have to have passive income. And this is what I would tell everybody. If you cannot make money while you sleep with your passive income, then that means you're going to have to work until you die. So I'm always looking for passive income. So that's what you really have to do. Take control of your own retirement.
That's a really great advice. Yeah, that's awesome. What does Black History Month mean to you?
So to me, so Black History Month to me is about the Black future. What does that mean? To me, the Black future is all about taking control of our own destiny. You know, we've been, we got brought to this country in change. It's been over 400 years, and this incremental progress is just not enough anymore. And you see that with people taking the streets and some of these other things. People, it's just people not taking it anymore. So we have to take control of our own destiny, and you do that through wealth. And that's the reason why I'm so focused on wealth creation, because generational wealth means you own your own economics. It gives you the ability to own the old schools in your neighborhood, the homes in your neighborhood, the businesses, the jobs in your own neighborhood, and you build an ecosystem. And that's really the formula for success in this country, and it's why I'm so focused on it. So I'll just give you an example, because people are always like, Henry, we always hear about, wealth creation, but how do you build wealth? And you have to look at where the future is headed. So I'll just give you, what's happening right now. If you look at blockchain and you looked at crypto, those two technologies, being the blockchain, it's the fastest adoption rate of any technology in the history of mankind. So the crypto industry is growing faster than the internet. So you have to ask yourself, and I know this is hard, but I ask myself every day, if you're starting a business, what are you going to do? Are you going to try to build a better pizzeria? Or are you going to try to jump onto this massive new infrastructure that is disrupting everything? And I say the latter. That's where wealth comes. Wealth comes from building things that people are going to use 20, 30 years from now. It's not building things that people use now. And that's something they don't teach you in school.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, because you're talking about the future. I think that we are very focused on the past, which was what, this is what I do, sort of, because Black History Month illuminates the issues. And I feel, for me, I took a pause, talked to my kids, and why we celebrate Black History Month. I got them to watch some interesting content and like cool movies like Soul, Harriet. And it's been great watching these movies with my family, but your perspective is so different. It's about the future. It's about building a great future for Black Americans. So thank you for for sharing that with us. What's been the through line in your career? What's remained the same while everything else has seemed to changed around you?
Yeah, so as you saw with the resume, my life story is crazy, but it's really because I've been on a journey. So my mom was a minister, so I grew up really, really, really spiritual. My dad was a colonel in the United States Air Force, so I always had to discipline the structure. And you combine those things, and you have someone who's trying to change the world. And growing up as a young Black man, you just don't see many people who are able to have the wealth to change things. So I always wanted to be that person to what some people would call build the kingdom of heaven, which means help lift people out of poverty, feed the poor, help people with their housing, help people get into better schools so they can start their career. That's important to me. So the through line of my career is I've always been trying to find what is the secret sauce to building the amount of wealth I need to do some of the philanthropy. So if you just look at me, there's two things I've always been after. Number one was finding my dream. And this is to the viewers too. You have to find your dream. And your dream is not a wish. It is, this is what I want to do. Here's my plan for achieving it. And this is the steps I'm going to take to make sure I'm on track. So, the mind can achieve anything it can conceive and believe, but you have to have a plan. And the second part, which is the big one, is once you find your dream, you have to fund your dream. and nobody was knocking on my door to throw wealth at me, right? So the fund my dream was the hardest part, and that's why I've been all over the place, because I've just been trying to figure out, how do you build wealth? Everybody talks about wealth as if you read a book like Think and Grow Rich and all of a sudden you're going to be manifesting billions of dollars the next day. It's not that. You build wealth by just, as I always say, looking into the future and finding out what people need. If you can provide more for other people than anybody else in more quantities, wealth will find you.
Has it been networking with the right folks for you? I know this is a question that I just, came to me. Has it been the right network? How do you do that? How have you built this empire around you?
So what you have to do is you have to see the world differently, because quite frankly, as you mentioned with your friend, we don't have the network, right? We don't have friends and family money. We don't have crowd funding money to tap into. But I don't get discouraged. So I take a big view, a macro view of the world. If you look at the world, if you look at the countries with the fastest growing populations, they're what we would consider minority populations, right? So if you look at Asia, you look at Africa, you look at South America, you look at Mexico, these countries are all what here in America we would call minorities. So I've always tapped into global. And once you see the world like that, that's how you build your network. So I was able to build my network by doing things 3 years ago that I got laughed at. Like when I was at NBDA and I was talking about artificial intelligence, people's eyes literally glossed over. But then the lockdown came and people realized that if you don't have a digital business, you can't serve your customers. People started listening, right? So yes, fortunately for a lot of people, I've put those links together. We have a strong network now. The only thing now is, get this institutional money so we can start dispersing it.
I see a picture of you with Vivica Fox. I love her.
Yeah, that really. So let me tell you about Vivica. She is, if you want an inspiration of someone who literally can, restart their career, she has changed her careers and started her own business. And she just keeps getting after it. She never accepts no. And, she talks about hustle. And she definitely hustles. So she really helped launch our Women of Color program. So I was really happy working with Vivica A. Fox.
Very inspiring woman. Henry, we have some questions from our audience. Audience, thank you so much for these questions. What are your thoughts about this? I think you're going to like, about AI helping close the racial wealth gap.
I cannot tell you how much I love technology. Some people think I'm a robot. I just love it. So AI, it's definitely, it is an answer, because what let's just take, like I just mentioned, we talked about accessing capital. In the past, again, you'd have to go to a bank to do it. Artificial intelligence, you go online, it's going to work around some of the blocks you might have with credit score, work history, whatever, and you can get it. Also in the affordable housing area, we're using AI to, for affordable housing. So what machines are able to do is they're able to solve these problems at scale. And you take some of the human bias. Now there is AI bias, but you take some of the human bias out of it. So yes, AI is a huge thing. It's the reason why I'm devoting my life to it.
Is that you feel, because the human bias is out of it, that it would be the biggest reason that will bring this racial wealth gap, to a close?
That, and because you can do it at scale. So as a human being, Henry Childs, I'm only able to influence people in a 30-mile, 100-mile vicinity. With AI, I literally can help somebody in China today. I can, get on a webcast with them and do everything virtually. It's just, and then I can look at their business, their credit score. I don't have to go through their credit scores or underwriting. I got a, machine that's doing all that stuff for me. So it's just a game changer. And that's why you see in some countries like Africa and stuff, when you start to see this new technology, you're starting to see some change, and I'm excited about it.
That's great. That's great perspective. Thank you. One LinkedIn user, I don't know the name of the LinkedIn user here, but they want to ask, cities like Atlanta and Dallas are trying to become tech hubs. What do you see that doing for racial pay equity?
Yeah. So I worked a lot with both of those cities. Actually, quite interesting. I've been in Texas, and my family is from Atlanta. And what it does is, I'll just talk about this younger generation to answer that question. This younger generation is like demanding things that my generation would ask for very quietly, like in like living wage, right? So now you come out of college and you work for a corporation, these people are demanding fair pay because they want to be able to, feed themselves. They want to pay off some student loan. They want to, grow their family. So what this technology is able to do is able to get these people in, I don't want to say better jobs, but higher paying jobs. But the only drawback from that, and is in the past, I talk about some of these jobs, at least they were there, right? If you worked at a plant, that plant was going to be there by the time you retire. Some of these tech jobs, they're there today and they're gone in 2 or 3 years. So I'm excited about them, but there are some drawbacks.
Great. I have an interesting question from a LinkedIn user. Why have you joined BayOne's board of advisors?
So first of all, I love BayOne.
Yeah,
BayOne,
love you too.
I love BayOne. BayOne is tech. BayOne was they were doing future of work stuff before people were even talking about future work stuff. And that's how I met up with the team. I was in Atlanta. I was giving one of my speeches about AI, and only, and as you can imagine, a lot of people were rolling their eyes. I met someone from BayOne. He was like, "I've been trying to get this the whole time. We have all the technical expertise. We just need somebody who can do some of the, marketing, can sell it." So I was like, "Well, I can sell it." So we worked on it over a number of years. We partnered together, and BayOne has done so much. So I'll just say there, going purple. BayOne did great things for women entrepreneurs. With the Go Purple, they're really focused on the gender gap. And then they're like, hey, we want to do the same thing now with ethnicities, Black, Hispanic, Asian-owned businesses. Will you come help? And I said absolutely, because if you look at demographics in this country, it's going brown.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very passionate about Make Tech Purple here. Suva Sharma has a question for you. Do you think hiring managers are generally aware of the increasing wealth gap? What can companies like BayOne do to bring more awareness?
So are they aware? Yes. Do they do anything about it? No. So what companies like BayOne can do is show the economic benefits of having a more diverse work base. I mean, study after study, whether it be McKinsey, Deloitte, Accenture, show diverse workforces generate more revenue for businesses. These are just facts now. So the thing is to show businesses how, we're not asking you to do this to make minorities feel good. This is not just a social thing. This is an economic imperative. If you want to, especially with, again, Generation Z, millennials, if you want to do business with young people, you better have some people on your team that look like them. And that's just a fact. And more corporations now are noticing that. That's why you see more commercials, more movies with diverse workforces, because it's just a demand. Young people care about the environment and they care about these social issues.
Absolutely. I have a comment here from Mohammed, and I think it's a comment here resonates with what you're saying. To create an economy that works for all of us, we need to understand and address racial wealth inequality. Sorry. Thank you for that comment, Mohammed. Thank you, Henry, for coming on. It was such a pleasure talking to you. Your perspective is so refreshing. And we just really value you here at BayOne. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you guys.
Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. The impact of Black Americans in history is remarkable and indelible. We don't have the luxury of forgetting the past, but as Henry mentioned, let's look at the future. Let's celebrate Black History Month by having tough conversations and asking our kids to be more thoughtful. If I haven't covered your questions, please contact us on Twitter. I hope you enjoyed today's Throughline. It was great having you all on today. Hope you all have a great month. Thank you.